All right, so are you ready to dive into a real ghost town today?
Oh, yeah. Always up for a good ghost story.
Yeah, well, this one is extra interesting, I think.
Okay, I'm listening.
So we're looking at Kuldhara. It's this village in India that was just abandoned centuries ago,
Mhm.
and nobody really knows why.
Okay, so what do we know about it?
Well, we've got travel guides and historical articles, so we can actually piece together some of what might have happened. It's not just like spooky campfire tales.
Oh, cool. So let's hear it. What's the story?
All right, so Kuldhara was founded way back in 1291 by these people called the Paliwal Brahmins.
The Paliwal Brahmins.
Yeah, and get this, they were known for being incredible farmers, which is wild because they lived in the Thar Desert, one of the harshest environments you can imagine.
Yeah, that's not exactly known for its lush fields.
Right, so they must have been super resourceful to actually build a life there.
Yeah, for sure. So what happened? I mean, you said it was abandoned, right?
Yeah, and that's the crazy part. About 300 years ago, everyone in Kuldhara just vanished.
Like overnight?
Pretty much, yeah. And nobody knows exactly why they left.
Wow. So it's a real mystery than a historical mystery.
Exactly, and of course, when you have a mystery like that, people start coming up with theories.
Oh, I bet. So what are some of the leading theories?
Well, some of the sources talk about political unrest, maybe oppressive rulers,
Yeah.
pushing the Paliwal Brahmins to their breaking point.
Yeah, that makes sense, especially if they were already dealing with a tough environment.
Right, and then there's always the possibility of natural disasters. I mean, that region was prone to droughts and famines.
So maybe they just couldn't survive there anymore.
Yeah, it's like they were facing these impossible circumstances and they just decided to pack up and leave.
I can only imagine what that must have been like. The fear, the desperation trying to protect their family.
Oh, absolutely, and that's where the story takes a turn for the even more mysterious.
Oh boy, here we go.
So local folklore is full of legends about why the villagers left, and one of the most common ones is a curse. Yeah, the story goes that before they left, the Paliwal Brahmins cursed Kuldhara to stay empty forever.
Wow, talk about holding a grudge.
Right, and it seems to have worked because no one has been able to resettle the village since.
So maybe it is cursed.
Well, whether you believe in curses or not,
Yeah,
it definitely adds to the creepy factor.
yeah, for sure. And I bet that leads to even more stories, right?
Oh, wherever you have a curse, you're bound to have ghost stories.
Ooh. Are there ghost stories about Kuldhara?
Definitely people talk about these ghostly figures called Chudales that supposedly roam the village at night.
Chills, literally just thinking about it.
And even without the ghost stories, I bet just being in Kuldhara would be eerie, walking through those empty streets, seeing those crumbling houses.
Oh, I can only imagine it's like stepping back in time.
And speaking of the houses, they're actually pretty amazing from an architectural standpoint.
Oh, really?
Yeah, they were built from this local sandstone, which gives them this golden color.
Yeah.
And the way they were designed, you can see how connected the community was to the environment.
I love that. So they weren't just surviving, they were actually thriving.
Exactly. And
Yeah.
some sources even talk about these ingenious water harvesting systems they had.
Wow, so they were really innovative.
Totally.
Yeah.
Which makes their sudden disappearance even more perplexing.
Yeah, you don't just walk away from a society like that without a really good reason.
Right. And that brings us to one name that keeps popping up in all our sources, Salim Singh.
Salim Singh, who was he?
He was the Dewan of Jaisalmer, which was basically like a chief minister, a super powerful official.
Ah, okay, so he's a big deal.
It's huge. And some legends say that he was obsessed with the village chief's daughter
Okay.
and that his unwanted advances, maybe even threats against the villagers, might have been what caused them to flee.
So it's not just a ghost story, it's a story about power, love, maybe even rebellion.
Exactly. It makes you wonder,
Huh.
did they leave to protect the chief's daughter? Did they feel like they had no other choice?
It's like something straight out of a movie.
Seriously.
Mm.
But it also makes you think about Salim Singh. Was he really a villain? Was he just a love-struck fool?
Or maybe it's even more complicated than that.
That's what's so cool about exploring Kuldhara. You're piecing together these fragments of history, these whispers of legend, trying to understand not just what happened, but why.
It's like a historical puzzle.
Totally, and I'm hooked. Let's try to put more of the pieces together, shall we?
Okay, bring on the next clue. Welcome back to our deep dive into Kuldhara. It's been pretty fascinating so far.
Yeah, this whole story is like a puzzle with missing pieces.
And we're trying to figure out how they all fit together.
Exactly. And I think to solve this puzzle, we need to look more closely at the people at the heart of it, the Paliwal Brahmins.
Yeah, who were these people? What were their lives really like?
Well, our sources describe them as a community that was deeply connected to agriculture, which is amazing considering they lived in the middle of the Thar Desert.
Yeah, that's pretty impressive. How did they manage to grow crops in a place like that?
They were masters of water management.
Yeah.
Seriously, these guys knew how to make every drop count.
Like, what kind of techniques did they use?
Well, they built these intricate irrigation systems to capture rainwater, and they even figured out ways to draw moisture up from deep beneath the desert sand.
Wow, that's some serious ingenuity.
It was essential for their survival.
Mm.
They had to be resourceful to make it in that environment.
And it sounds like they weren't just surviving, they were thriving.
Right, and farming wasn't their only skill.
Yeah.
Some of the articles mentioned that they were also pretty good traders.
Oh, really? So they had connections outside of Kuldhara.
Yeah, they established these trade routes that stretched across the desert. Imagine camel caravans laden with spices, textiles, all sorts of goods.
That's a cool image, those caravans going back and forth across the dunes.
Yeah, it must have been quite a sight.
So they were kind of like desert nomads then.
Well, not exactly nomadic, but they definitely knew how to navigate and survive in that harsh landscape.
They must have had a deep understanding of the land, the stars, the weather patterns.
Yeah, that kind of knowledge gets passed down through generations.
And along with all that, they also seem to have had a strong sense of community and justice.
Absolutely. One source even talked about how they had a council of elders to govern the village, to make sure things were fair and orderly.
It's fascinating to get these glimpses into their social structure.
Yeah, it sounds like they really valued knowledge, self-reliance, cooperation.
It wasn't just about each individual, it was about the whole community.
And that makes their sudden departure even more intriguing.
You're right. It's not like they were a group of people who would just up and leave for no reason.
So do you think there's a possibility of internal conflict? Maybe something happened within the community that pushed them to leave?
That's an interesting thought. I mean, the sources don't really mention any specific disputes.
But you have to figure that a decision as drastic as abandoning their village would have required some kind of consensus.
Yeah, maybe there were different factions within the village, some who wanted to stay and others who were adamant about leaving.
Right, and maybe those who wanted to stay just felt outnumbered or outmaneuvered in the end.
And can you imagine how heartbreaking that must have been to leave a home they had built over generations?
To leave behind a way of life they had so carefully created.
Not to mention the logistics of it all, moving an entire village across the desert with their families, their belongings, their livestock.
It boggles the mind. How did they even coordinate something like that?
And where did they go? I mean, the sources we have don't really give us a clear answer.
It's so frustrating. You'd think they would have left some kind of clue,
Yeah.
a message carved into a wall or something.
Yeah, right? Like, we went this way, follow us.
Exactly. But it seems like they wanted to disappear without a trace.
Well, some historians believe they might have integrated into other communities, maybe even changed their surnames to protect their identities.
So it's possible that there are descendants of the Paliwal Brahmins living in Rajasthan today.
And they might not even know about their ancestors' incredible journey.
That's wild to think about. Their story could be hidden in plain sight.
It's like a real-life treasure hunt, but instead of gold, we're searching for traces of a lost community.
And their legacy is out there somewhere, whispered on the wind, hidden in the sands of time.
And that's what I love about Kuldhara. It's not just about the ruins and the ghost stories.
It's about the mystery of it all.
Yeah, the mystery of human resilience and adaptability.
And the power of stories passed down through generations.
Speaking of stories, we've talked about the legends and the history, but we haven't really touched on the paranormal side of things.
Oh yeah, the ghost stories.
Are there really ghosts in Kuldhara? Let's find out.
So are we ready to get spooky now?
I think we've been in spooky territory for a while now.
True.
Yeah.
But now we're getting into the really good stuff, the paranormal stuff.
Okay, I'm intrigued. Hit me with the ghost stories.
All right, well, our sources are packed with stories about ghostly encounters at Kuldhara.
Oh, really? Like what kind of encounters?
People talk about strange noises,
Yeah.
sudden chills, the feeling of being watched, like someone is right behind you.
Ooh, that's creepy.
Some even claim to have seen apparitions, like full-on ghosts, or captured photos of weird lights.
Wow, that's wild. So do you think there's any truth to these stories?
Well, it's hard to say for sure, but it's interesting that a lot of these accounts come from visitors, people who might not even know the history of Kuldhara.
So they're not just like local legends. These stories are coming from outsiders, too.
Yeah, and it makes you wonder if maybe their expectations are influencing their experiences. They go there expecting to find something spooky, and their minds kind of fill in the blanks.
So it's like a self-fulfilling prophecy.
Yeah, maybe. But I also think there's something to be said for the power of place. When you're standing in a village that's been abandoned for centuries, surrounded by those empty buildings.
Yeah, I can see how that atmosphere could get to you.
It's easy to let your imagination run wild. Shadows start to look like figures, whispers sound like voices.
It wouldn't take much to convince me I was seeing a ghost.
Right. So do you believe in ghosts?
I believe in the power of stories. Whether these encounters are real or just in our heads, they add to the mystique of Kuldhara.
Yeah, they remind us that there are things we may never be able to explain.
Exactly, and that's what makes exploring these topics so fun. It's not about finding all the answers, it's about embracing the unknown, you know?
Absolutely. Allowing ourselves to wonder, to speculate.
To be a little bit humbled by the vastness of history and the limits of what we know.
So true. And I think Kuldhara is a perfect example of that. We may never know for sure why those villagers left, but that doesn't make their story any less powerful.
Yeah, it's a story that's been passed down for generations and it still resonates with us today.
It makes you think about our own legacies.
Mm-hmm.
What will people say about us hundreds of years from now?
Will there be stories about us? Will people be digging through the ruins of our cities trying to figure out who we were?
It's a pretty mind-blowing thought.
It is. It reminds us that even the most impressive creations can fade away eventually.
And that maybe the most important thing is the connections we make, the stories we share.
The impact we have on the world.
Yeah, making something meaningful that might just last a little bit longer than we do.
Well, I hope people in the future have as much fun digging into our stories as we've had with Kuldhara.
It's been a wild ride for sure.
Lots of twists and turns and mysteries.
And a healthy dose of spookiness.
Can't forget the spookiness. So to all our listeners out there, if you're fascinated by Kuldhara, I encourage you to keep digging.
Yeah, read those articles, explore those legends, and if you ever get the chance to visit this place, do it.
You might just feel the echoes of the past whispering to you, inviting you to uncover their secrets.
And who knows, maybe you'll even see a Chewdale. Just kidding, mostly. But seriously, keep exploring, keep questioning, and keep diving deep into the mysteries all around us.
That's what it's all about. See you next time.